Change is inevitable in the companies that we work for, especially in tech. And within that change was a different go-to-market strategy that unfortunately eliminated a good portion of the business unit that I was a part of, including my own position. You can get an extra 10 to 20% production if you run a business where people are passionate to be a part of it, to not just do the work within it, but to be a part of a culture and environment where you're learning, you're growing, and you're building strong relationships around you. I think it's really important as a VP in my position where I've got a couple layers of leadership under me, that I am looking for EQ in the interview process.
Just imagine you have to let go of 20% of your team next week. What are the 2-3 things that you must do before, and during, and after the conversation? Matt, how's it going, my friend?
Good, Michael. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. How have you been?
Well, fortunately, no big stories is usually good news. There's nothing too big. A little bit of travel, a lot of work, but everything is good. Thank you for asking.
That's amazing. Look, I'm super excited for our conversation today because the topic is relevant to many people in the space right now. So we're going to talk about RIFs. And sure. I know you walked through that path, and I'm sure there are a lot of learnings. There are a lot of things that you would potentially, do differently today. So if that sounds good, this is the topic. But before we get started, we want to get to know you a little bit more. Tell us about your background. How did you end up in sales and stay for so long, and what you're working on these days?
Well, my journey was a winding road, which is probably not dissimilar to many others that you'll talk to. I grew up on a small island off the coast of Florida, Amelia Island, which I totally underappreciated as a young person. And I now get to go back and see my parents. It's the best. But anyways, while I was there, I was working for the Ritz-Carlton. And it was an amazing experience as a young person. That's an iconic brand that understands intensely how to treat its guests and its employees the right way. And to be exposed to that, even unknowingly, right? I knew no different, but I was exposed to something so intense to start my career that it really embedded a lot of the right principles in how I would show up in every role thereafter. And so anyways, I started my career there. I knew that I wanted to get my master's degree and leave the island because, again, you always want to leave the place you grow up. You have no idea how sick it is until you just you leave and you're like, oh man, that was really cool. But anyways, I wanted to get my master's degree. I wanted to go to Chicago. I made that decision to do that. And so I left the Ritz, although it was an amazing time. And I was a front of the house restaurant manager, is the long story short. I go to Chicago, and that's where everything really started for me, the sales stuff. In my master's coursework, we were in some marketing courses. My professor started to talk about Groupon. And it was like, hey, this is a really new novel thing. They're doing this discount thing where everybody has to kind of buy together. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I could use a buck on the side here. I was doing night classes. And so I applied. I got an AE job. And if you were in Chicago at that time, this was probably 2010, everybody, it seemed, was starting to work at Groupon, which was such a cool experience, especially those around my demographic and age. So I started as an AE. I launched a couple of markets, as many people did at that time. And so it was this mix of selling and trying to understand a market dynamic. So it was New Orleans for me at the time. I'd never been to New Orleans, but fast forward a year and it was like I was a local. And I think that there's a microcosm of truth in that, in all selling success. And that is, can you learn about the intricacies of what you're selling and where you're selling to better appreciate those that are buying? And I think I did that pretty well. So anyways, I did that for a year. That was my AE stuff. I was, like I said, doing a master's degree, moved into management post my master's degree completing. And I went on to lead teams of different sizes. So some Texas markets, then I moved into a second line sales leadership role, which is a regional sales director. And I had a ton of fun over, I want to say, about 5 years there. Then I spent some time at Salesforce, which I can expand on. But, I was there for a couple years, 6 years, and now I've been at Sprout for almost 5 years as well. So anyways, that's my journey.
I love it. That sounds like an amazing journey. And I want to start with what you said, place we were born. We don't appreciate it enough. I would move to your island today. Give me that warmth and the sun.
Well, if you get a chance to go, Amelia Island's a beautiful place to vacation, and I'm very lucky to be
I
able to
bet.
go there now for my parents. But I'll tell you, there's maybe this is just a certain characteristic of mine, which is like generally reflective. But I'm reflective positively of that. We're going to talk about the RIF moment in my career. I reflect on that as like a really important moment to grow from. And so all of these different things that I've been through, my time at Salesforce, my time at Groupon, the RIF, my time on the island and working for the Ritz, it's funny because you don't know it in those moments, but they end up being such a serving moment from a growth perspective if you allow them to be. And you
Mhm.
sit there and you say, okay, like, well, here's the circumstances of what's happened. Here's what I've learned through this experience. How will it serve me in the future? And I've always tried to do that in the things that I'm doing. And the older I get, unfortunately, everything hurts, but the older I get, the more I'm able to kind of like chew on these things a little bit and
Mhm.
understand what they meant in my life.
So interesting. It sounded like you really liked Groupon. So it started
I
as
love
an AE, got into leadership. You open markets. Like this is always interesting. Like I did a lot of early stage, sales for different startups,
it.
and
Yeah.
Groupon, with that massive, success and expansion. I'm
Yeah.
sure, you had some attachment to this brand. It's just like, hey, it's part of who I am. And I wanted to ask you this question: What was the first hour like after you got the news that hey, this is it with Groupon?
Okay, so you're bringing me back to a really vulnerable place. So I appreciate the question. Well, let me start by just double clicking on the point that you made, which is I loved it. I wouldn't say I liked it. I loved it, and I bet you if you talk to anybody who was in a comparable sort of position to my
Yeah.
own, they would describe it the same. And I'd say the reason why you love it is because of the chaos that was within it.
Mhm.
This was a business that was growing faster, I think, than any other company was growing up to that point in history. And within that was a whole host of newness. It's like we're doing something nobody's ever done from a product market perspective. We're launching new markets. We're building new sales teams. Many of us were, experiencing our first leadership opportunity in our lives. And so, you know, you're sitting down next to somebody who's in a similar position and you don't really know how it's going to go and what you're doing. You're doing the best you can. And there's some special camaraderie that was built
Mhm.
within that. So I just wanted to double click on that point. I really look back on it fondly. But, as do many companies, things shifted, demand shifted. The way the company was running in terms of the products it was launching, et cetera, were shifting. And within those shifts, comes different performance and different needs from a hiring perspective and reorgs and different leadership. And I won't belabor that point, but change is inevitable in the companies that we work for, especially in tech. And within that change was a different go to market strategy that unfortunately eliminated a good portion of the business unit that I was a part of, including my own position. And I remember in that moment thinking, what's wrong with me? Like I'm broken. There's you know you have all of these floods of doubt that come to you, and it's a very intense feeling. You leave that office thinking, I'm a broken person, there's something wrong with me. I felt like I was doing the best I could for a company that I absolutely loved, with the people that I loved, that for all intents and purposes I only got positive signal from those around me that like I was seemingly doing a pretty good job. So it was hard to process it all, is my point there. And I remember it took me some time talking to people that I loved, my family, my wife at the time, to basically say to me, you're not broken. The things around you have changed, and that's okay. This will happen in your life. And you need to think about what's the opportunity that's going to present yourself the greatest learnings. And that's the thing that you should go pursue. And so it was sort of this epiphany of like, I'm not a problem. I can contribute somewhere, and kind of gathering those pieces and doing so, which ended up being at Salesforce for me. And so it was a really important time for me, although very difficult.
You know what's so interesting about what you just shared? I think everyone who actually walked through this, situation, you might question your abilities. Like,
Yeah.
hey, am I the problem? Maybe I'm not good enough. Then you might get angry at the company, you get angry
Yeah.
at the leadership. But you said something even more interesting. Said I started talking to people that I love and trust, starting with my wife.
Yeah.
Basically, just I'm the same. Like I would love to talk what's in here. I don't want to keep it to myself. And that's how I can get feedback from people. So I wanted to ask you, it seems like it worked for you. Like it helped you find, a path to move forward with life and go to Salesforce, and right now again grow in your career. Well, what do you wish you had done differently if you could
Mm.
just go back?
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Well, first off, I think the value of talking to people that you love and trust is that they can be rather pragmatic with you. They can talk, and get you out of a moment. You know,
Hmm.
you're consumed by emotion. You love a place, it ends abruptly. My thoughts are clouded. It's depressing. It's all those things, and those people can help pull you out of that moment and say, okay, well,
Hmm.
here are the facts of the situation. Within those facts, Michael, and this is kind of getting to your point, is this reflection of like, I didn't do everything right. And instead of being so consumed by like, what's wrong with me and why didn't things end up different for me, it became much more a reflection of like, what did I learn in this experience? What were the things that I did exceptionally well that I want to recycle in the opportunities that are presented to me moving forward? And then also, are you willing to sit down and say to yourself, like, well, actually, there's some things that if I could go back and do different, I totally would. And it took me some time to get to that place with some people that I really loved and trusted, to kind of get to a point of like, okay, let's let this serve me. And I can start
Hmm.
to reflect and learn and grow and carry that into the next opportunity. And I wish I would have done that in the moment more often. I was so consumed by the moment as I was going through it in these positions, they never really took very much time to think about like, is what I'm doing working? Is this the right way to go about this? What are the impacts to this decision 2 to 3 people beyond the person that I'm speaking to right now? And I think I was fortunate in that I was very well intended and a people first leader. So most of my decisions probably at that time served people fairly well. But if one of them didn't, I don't know that I would have seen it all that quickly. I don't know that I would have learned from it fast enough. And it took some maturing in life and going through this moment to become much more sensitive to the moments of reflection so I can carry it into the positions that I hold now. And I definitely would not be holding the position I hold now if it weren't for that moment and the taught experience of reflection.
I love this. Look, you're leading a team right now, and sometimes you have to cut, headcount, and this is the reality. And especially past 2 years, we've seen it's happening, across the board,
Yep.
regardless of the industry. People get, fired. How did your experience walking through RIF change the way you actually lead your teams right now?
Well, I think it makes you much more sensitive to the human experience. The reality of what we do is that certain people will not be a good fit for the position that they're hired
Mhm.
for. And I don't know uh, a more sensitive way of saying that. It's just the reality of the circumstances. Now, your job as a leader is to put everybody in a position where they can thrive. If they go tap into their potential and they have the aptitude to learn, that you put them in a position to thrive. But there are certain times where it doesn't work out, and there are also reorgs and things like that that occur. I think at the center of all that is a sense of humanity, helping people understand that they are worth it, that they need to be in a position at which they can provide as much value as the company can provide to them. And it's made me much more sensitive to running a business where people want to fight to be there.
Mhm.
You can get an extra 10 to 20% production if you run a business where people are passionate to be a part of it, to not
Mhm.
just do the work within it, but to be a part of a culture and environment where you're learning, you're growing, and you're building strong relationships around you. And I think going through some of the hardships that I went through at that time helped me become more sensitive to creating that environment in the business units that I lead. And part of that is about hiring the right leaders to help you create that environment and things like that. So I would say that's probably the thing it most intensely taught me in going through these moments. I mean, fortunately, I haven't been through a lot of like rifts, through all the, but I'll tell you, as big a company as Salesforce is, all of them will go through these types of moments. I think a sense of humanity is what I learned most intensely.
This is so true. And it sounds like you just, again, start with people. Let's hire leaders who have this humility and take care of my humans in the front line.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to, make it more tactical. Some people have to go regardless of how great they are in their position, because we all know that sometimes, again, it's a decision from the board, and you as a leader, your hands might be, tied, right?
Sure.
You have to let them go. What is it that most leaders constantly get wrong when
Yep.
laying off good people? People that might be a fit actually, but they have to let them go.
Mine immediately goes to I think great leaders play offense. I am building my business units not with, and this is very different from my time at Groupon, even into Salesforce.
Mhm.
I was in these roles and I was thinking about what will serve me, my teammates, my business right now, all the
Mhm.
time. I was obsessed with the now. I actually do not obsess with the now in the same way. I obsess with what will happen in 2 years based off the decisions I make today. And that means that sometimes I have to make more difficult decisions to maybe forfeit the short-term gain for a long-term gain. And that could be our go-to-market strategy. It could be where we're removing some of our headcount and shifting it to from a territory and region perspective, because the market opportunity is most acutely available to us in a different place than where we are invested at this point. And I think a lot of people get it wrong by saying, I'm just going to make what we do now marginally better. And at
Mhm.
some point, marginally better isn't good enough. And somebody will then dictate the terms of that change to you. And I wish I would have known this at my time at Groupon. I would have looked at things very different. Although, I should be graceful. I was going through so many of these things for the first time. But anyways, I wish I knew those things. So the way I lead a business unit now is very different in that I'm thinking about where will we go. And sometimes, Michael, like in this, I think is really important, and some sales leaders get this wrong. They will not attack a hard conversation early. They will stay the course too long. They will play the easier path. And I think ingesting more pain faster and upfront leads to more gain and better opportunities in the future. And so it shifted the way at which I do a lot of my position at this juncture.
I like what you said about like not only focusing on today, because most of us again look what's in front of us. Let's just fix the problem. Let's move forward. Let's see what happens. And that can really have negative impact on our team as well because we just didn't do the right planning as a leader. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, they are in the front lines. We need to take care of a strategy and find ways for them to actually stay with the company to get better.
Michael, I'll even, if you don't mind me interjecting,
Yeah, of course.
I'll give you an analogy. I think if you went to a doctor and you had an underlying problem, it could be something as severe as cancer. The analogy doesn't really matter. What I'm trying to say is if you treat the superficial part of that problem, then you
Mhm.
will always get short-term superficial results. A doctor will attack the underlying issue so that the superficial parts of that disease start to erode over time, start to go away. And I think about it the same way. And obviously, the degrees of importance in life, one is very different than the other. But I hope you can kind of pick up what I'm putting down here, which is attack the thing that is causing the result to occur so it doesn't occur
Right.
in the future, as opposed to just fixing the acute problem that exists. You see this so often in the systems that you create, right? Like your Salesforce instance, you just patchwork on top of things and you're like, okay, I'll create a new field to fix this problem. And then, you don't ever get to the root problem of why you need that field in the first place. So anyways, I don't mean to cut you off, but like, I just thought to myself, that's sort of the best illustration of the way that I view things.
No, I actually really like this analogy. And to your point, if you go to a doctor and it's a real practitioner, if God forbid, someone got cancer, then they're not going to sugarcoat it. Said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but this is the reality. You got cancer. Let's just look at the options. Let's see
Yep.
how we can actually, cure it or just accept it."
Yep.
But we tend to, kind of like sugarcoat things and hype things with a hope of fixing, with good faith.
Yeah.
And in short term, okay, it might actually, help, but long term, to your point, when the root cause of those problems are not really fixed, and we ended up again looking even more bad in front of our people and maybe ruin the culture because I never got anything from you and it
So true.
feels like a shocker to me. So now I have to go, nobody communicated during the past, let's say, 2 years, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden I'm gone. So just imagine, for the sake of our audience, like you're a CRO or you're a senior VP of sales, and you have to let go of 20% of your team next week. What are the two, three things that you must do before and during and after the conversation?
The way I would view it is this. I mean, first, as you're leading up to that decision, as a senior leader, it is your responsibility to have vision. There must be, because you have ramifications of the people beyond that person impacted that
Hmm.
will look at it and say, I no longer believe in your vision and the company's vision if it's not steadfast. You have to have a strong why on why you're executing a change as profound as that one. So the first thing I would say to myself in preparation would be, what's your vision? Why are you doing this? Do you understand what the implications are of the decision today and what it looks like in 2 years? The second piece, and this was a pretty simple one, is it's that humanity piece. The people impacted, their lives really matter, and they need to. And I wish somebody would have sat down with me a little bit more intensely when it happened to me and said, like, you are worth it. There's nothing wrong with you. I think being empathetic, being human in that moment really goes a long way for people that might be in vulnerable positions, and so that they can pick up where they left off professionally and take their experiences and carry it to a place and make a big difference. Because we all have a lot to offer. And so I think that part's really important. The third piece, the after the fact, in my opinion, is all about communication. Are you offering office hours and providing people a space to come talk to you and tell you how they feel? Are you offering them, again, reinforcement of that vision of where you're trying to go to as a business unit? And so I think it's availability thereafter that you need to be thinking about.
So, what are some typical signs that we need to look for to make sure that we are not ruining the culture?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we've probably all had experiences where we've been around people that you're like, man, you really made all those choices, and then this is why we're in this position. I would say the ethos of this is going to be communication. Think about communication at the center, and then you got a bunch of bubbles there
Right.
outside of it that you need to execute on. Individual communication, so skip levels, things of that
Mhm.
nature. Team communications, are you joining team meetings? How are your leaders, those that report into you, delivering the information that needs to be given in those settings? What's your mass comms look like? All of those things need to be excellent so that people understand that they have a space to tell you how they feel, that they can process what has occurred, and that they can grasp onto where you're going to go. Because you should make these difficult decisions only with the intention of building a better future. If
Mhm.
you make it for any other reason, you're likely just masking a problem. You need to make hard decisions as a business leader that will set you up for durable and lasting success. And sometimes reorganizations and things of that matter, much like I went through personally, are in an effort to do that.
Should we, as leaders, over communicate with things like this happen in our team? So during coaching sessions or one on ones, for how long should we actually over communicate? What signs can we see that our team just got back to the right track and they started performing, normally?
Yeah. Okay. So where my mind went to first is around EQ. And this is a really hard thing to teach leaders, but I'll tell you, I think it's really important as a VP in my position where I've got a couple layers of leadership under me,
Mhm.
that I am looking for EQ in the interview process.
Mhm.
How have you shown up for somebody that's going through a difficult time? How do you recognize team dynamics and culture and improve them? These types of things suss out whether somebody has social awareness. And I think the answer to your question is not like hey, it's 48 hours and then you're done. Life is not that binary. And I'm a pretty firm believer that things are on a spectrum.
Mhm.
I think on that spectrum is an awareness from an EQ perspective of how you need to show up within any reasonable amount of time. I'd answer it this way. If your team is hurting as a leader, you need to be able to become aware of that by the way people are showing up, the way they're communicating with you in one on ones. And then you need to give them the space to process that news and move forward from it and provide an inspiring vision of the future. At a certain point, it does not serve you anymore, right? So if you're 3 months after a moment like this and you're still talking about this, then you've missed the moment that you needed to show up for earlier to get people through that hard moment. But I think at the core of the answer, Michael, is having a really good EQ to understand where people are, what they need within a reasonable amount of time after a difficult decision like this.
That make a lot of sense. And this reminds me of my recent conversation with one of our enterprise clients. And we
Mm.
have a very close relationship. We always, brainstorm ideas. He asked me a question. He said, "Look, you have an AI coach. You really focus on skill building. What if, because they went through a huge, round of layoff, so big portion of the team had to go. They had to bring, more senior people. And said, can we train your AI to basically give this peace of mind to my reps at this moment at scale?" I was like, I don't want to go in that direction, and I don't want to foresee future
Yeah.
that leaders don't actually pay that attention and give more even one-on-ones and more time and more effort to try to really understand each individual and get that culture back. Because I think if we get to the point that AI really takes over everything we do as leaders, I don't even know if we have sales organizations or, in fact, any frontlining, organizations, whether it's support, sales, customer success. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Can we really outsource such activities to AI?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I would say there's a sense of humanity to sales that will always be existent. And for that reason, I am of the camp that I cannot imagine a world where, to some degree, there is a large sales workforce. I will say, however, that I think AI provides an opportunity to get to the right buyer, to talk to the right buyer with the right value proposition, to be much more intensely aware of the things that they're going through as a company and buyer. And all of these things should make the buy decision easier for the buyer and the sell experience much easier for the seller. And so, really, in my opinion, it's about lane expansion. Let's say back on that Amelia Island where I grew up, there's a single dirt road and everybody starts to move to the island and that thing is super congested and it's awful to drive on. I think AI is the equivalent of making that a 3-lane road where people can pass much faster to and from and have a much more seamless experience from a buy journey perspective on both sides. But within that sort of drive is the human experience. And that is these people, your sellers, your buyers, want to buy based off of somebody's empathetic viewpoint on the way that that product can build whatever they're trying to accomplish as a business unit. And I don't think AI can solve that empathetic sort of emotional part of the buy experience. So for that reason, I'm of the camp that you're always going to have, to some extent, quite a bit of AEs across your business unit.
Look, we share the same sentiment, but there is a fact that because of bandwidth, because our leaders are not trained to be a great coach, right? We just don't give this coaching to our reps. Like, again, it's a phenomenal job if you figured out like how to really across the board give this one-on-one individual, coaching beyond skill development,
Yeah.
beyond pipe review, beyond just training and practice.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With SellMeThisPen AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at SellMeThisPen AI.
What I'm trying to understand is, can we even imagine a world that, because we don't even offer this coaching to our individual reps,
Oh, yeah.
use AI to do it, even if it's not 100% there?
Yeah. Okay. So this is an excellent question. The reason why I get really excited about it is I think there is something agentic available to us in the next 2 years that will transform the experience of both the buyer and the seller. This is what I was trying to get to earlier. As a seller, being able to train an AI agent to scour and scrape multiple different sources of information to understand the most common experience of a buyer and why they purchase,
Yep.
and creating a world where you can now engage with that agentic experience to coach and develop that person is a world I think we will be to in the next year. I think an AE, said another way, will be able to sit down with an AI bot and talk to them about their deal and or all of their deals and go back and forth on the things that it's observing from a mechanics perspective that that person can do better. And to your point, it's a very difficult thing from an AE manager to do, at least at scale. And so I think that world is absolutely in front of us. And this gets back to the highway expansion sort of analogy that I was giving to you. You do that and you add a lane to the seller's highway, if you will. It's faster for them to get to the place that they want to get to. And I think that is what AI is going to provide to both buyers and sellers. It's just a faster pathway to better coaching, to better pursuit of the right account. And then on the buyer side, it's about engaging with a chatbot that I think will help you understand all of the products available to you to solve a business need. And it'll supercharge your experience from like getting to the right vendor at the right time. So I just think that the pathways to getting a deal done will accelerate profoundly as a byproduct of these AI agents. But there still needs to be a driver. And that's the point I'm trying to make, which is I think that's where the sales rep will continue to exist, is in bringing all of that rich content and development and bringing it to the buyer at the right time for that sort of engagement.
I love this. This is so funny. And I love it when we have conversations and kind of like steer to, certain parts. I have to ask my last question right now because it's so relevant. So my previous guest on the podcast, Jose Carenza, he's the head of sales at Ergion. He asked me to ask you this question. He said, look, with AI making outreach easier for everyone, how are you helping your team stand out and stay ahead?
I think there's actually two interesting sort of angles to take here. The first, Michael, is that I actually want to undiversify, not a word, the selling experience a little bit. Meaning, I want you to be able to use AI to be much more value driven, unique. And I want that to be true across every one of my AEs. I mean, at a moment's notice, an AE now can create a really intense, comprehensive overview of a business, their challenges based off of all these historical records that might be public knowledge, and build a very creative outreach strategy for that buyer or to reach out to that buyer. And I want that to be true for every one of my AEs. It's why we're putting in a whole bunch of work on the AI front to create these agents for them here at Sprout. And I think in that way, you actually are making it less unique for every AE. You're giving everybody democratized access to providing a better buy journey with Sprout, the company that I'm at with right now. But to answer the question the second way, I would say there is an intense amount of humanity that goes into a buy decision. Does this person trust you? Do they look at you as a market expert? Do you understand what that person is uniquely going through in their role versus the company's role in buying this product? And I think that is where the uniqueness of the human experience is present. And so I would say in some ways it's democratizing access to really powerful information that helps you show up much more like meaningfully. But on the second version, it is like it's also helping you spend more time in the areas that are unique to that buyer. What do they care about? The emotions that go in the buy decision. Does that answer your question?
100%. Like, it reminds me of another conversation with another guest, and she was saying, look, I have this rule of 20, 60, 20. So 20% you give some, input to AI, and then 60% AI will get the job done.
Yeah.
Then you need that 20% to show your, I don't know, I used to be a musician, show your sonic signature, if you will.
Yeah, I love that.
This is my voice. This is how I do things. Yes, you might build this, let's say, unified messaging across the board, so everybody follow the brands and protect, what company wants to show as value proposition, for example. But I, as an individual, I have my word, I have my say, I have my way of doing. That's the artistry behind sales that I think will get more attention moving forward, to be honest. I know everybody's talking about data and how to leverage AI to automate so many things, but that makes having even AEs as a viable option moving forward. Otherwise, if everything can be automated completely and there is you don't see different taste, different approach to things, why do we even need the sellers? Let's just automate the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's a world where that ever exists. Now, Michael, like I think we've probably all been in a position over our life where it's like you couldn't forecast something and it happened, right? So I'm not saying there's no world where it ever happens, but in my world, it's very hard for me to imagine that not being the case. The way I look at it, and I think sports is a great analogy, is like if you're a NASCAR driver in the 1970s, you have a certain set of equipment within that car that helps you drive fast around that track. Now you put that same car on a track with cars in 2025. And by the way, the weirdness about this analogy is I think I've never watched a NASCAR race in my entire life. I have no idea why I'm saying this, but that car will get smoked because the assets available to the 2025 car are exponentially greater than the 1970s car. And I think that is a great microcosm of what we're talking about here. And that is AI is going to add very quickly a whole host of improvements to the AE's race car, and they're going to be able to get to the end journey much faster. But they have to drive that race car. That's the human experience. And you're going to have a lot of people sitting next to you with the similar set of really intense assets and resources through AI. And it's your job to find out how to careen those to get around that track first.
I'm with you 110%. Unfortunately, we are getting close and we need to wrap it up. So we're close to the end. I have some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
If you don't want to answer them, you can say, hey, skip it, just move on. But I would love to get your thoughts on them.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
complete this sentence. Sales leaders will be more effective if they
only invest in the human experience. I think it's going to be very easy in the world of AI being very loud and profound all around you. And by the way, very important work to be done and innovation to have, to get lost in that sauce and forget about the human experience. And I think it's those leaders that stay really true to that part of your organization will see the best success in whatever you deploy from an AI perspective.
I love it. Instead of sell me this pen, complete this. Sell me this.
I would say, sell me this experience. I don't think people are buying tangible assets the same way that they were 50 years ago. I think people are buying something that changes who you are, how to operate, and that at its core is an experience. Look, I'll tell you, I think Pixar is the world's greatest company at selling an experience at all ages and demographics. You watch that and you think to yourself, I can't wait for the next one of these animated, strange movies to come out because it just took me through an emotional experience. And I think the same is true. I mean, that's probably a really colorful analogy for an AE experience, but to some extent, I think the same is true for an AE. They are selling an experience.
110% with you. And I wish we could do another episode on this one, because how to emotionally really engage the clients, because we've even seen some really surprising, results. If you even go head to head with some of your competitors, if the experience is right for the buyer in front of you, you can win.
I agree.
All right. How leading sales impacted your personal development?
I would say, much like I bet many others, sometimes I struggle with anxiety or being very anxious, and I have most of my life. The reason I bring that up is because I think what sales has provided me an opportunity is to face that head on. There is chasing down a month's quota, all the pressure that's built into it, taking in the intense interest in the people's experience within your org. All of these are anxiety inducing, and you have to find a way, in a healthy way, by the way. Some people mask it by unhealthy habits. But if you're really smart, you take a look at that and you say, okay, that's true about me. And I need to build healthy habits to navigate through what is a part of who I am. And I think my work has challenged me to look at that face on. And it's helped me on the home front with my kids, who are, 9 and 7 years old, and they're constantly raging about God knows what, and that's anxiety inducing, and I'm much more patient with them. And so, I would say it's probably that I would answer with.
I love it. And what's so cool about sales, I would say, yes, you got your numbers, you got end of quarter, there are tons of crazy things that happen even outside of your control. But you learn something simple that, look, this month is done. Next one just started. So it always, continues. So regardless of what happened in the past, you can always review it. Like I had hard,
Michael, you bring up such it's an even better answer, frankly, and that is all that anxiety stuff is true, right? But I think the ability to move past a moment is the most important thing that sales has given to me. I do not dwell on things the same way that I did 10 years ago. You would think oh my gosh, this didn't go my way. The world is falling apart, and now I'm like, oh, that didn't go my way. What can I learn from it? And you move on to the next thing right away. And so I think that might be a better answer, actually.
I love that. All right, last question. Our next guest is Marcus Chand. He's a top LinkedIn voice and a sales trainer dash coach. What question or questions do you have for him?
Well, we kind of flirted with the subject earlier, and I'd be really interested to hear this from him. And that is, how does he view the agentic experience from a learnings perspective for people in all different positions within a selling organization? How do you train trainers with an agentic? And then I'd say the second part to that question is, how does he see the role of a leader, a sales leader, evolving in the world of the agentic experience?
I love this, and it's so interesting that the topic we're covering with Marcus is around actually Gen AI in sales and
Yeah.
what will happen in our sales organizations. So I definitely make sure that I ask this question and send the answers to you. Look, Matt, I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad we made it happen.
Sure.
If someone wants to reach out to you, first and foremost, can they and how?
Yeah, totally. Probably easiest way is my email, Matthew, Mattthew, .Loria, Loria, at sproutsocial.com. That's my work email or my personal email, mloria2 at gmail.com. Either one's totally fine. And if there's anything I can help with, I'm happy to. I love building my network through means just like we're doing right now. So feel free to reach out.
Amazing. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, Michael.